The diner was supposed to be peaceful, just another morning filled with the smell of coffee and pancakes. But when a group of bikers stormed in, laughter turned to fear, and no one dared to speak, except one boy, a quiet kid who didn't look like much, but what he did next, no one in that diner would ever forget. Because sometimes heroes don't wear badges or capes. They just stand up when no one else will. What happened that day would not only silence the bikers, but change an entire town forever. The comforting aroma of sizzling bacon and fresh coffee filled the Route 78 diner, a small, cozy roadside haven tucked deep in rural Georgia. It was one of those places where time seemed to slow down, where truckers, families, and locals came together every morning under the same flickering neon sign. The gentle clinking of plates, the faint hum of conversation, and the occasional ring of the kitchen bell painted the usual soundtrack of peace. But today, something in the air was different. In the corner booth, near the window, sat Malik Johnson, a quiet 16-year-old black teenager in a faded grey sweatshirt and worn-out jeans. His posture was calm, his face expressionless, his gaze lost in the view outside. To anyone watching, he was just another kid killing time over fries and soda. But Malik was far from ordinary. Behind those calm eyes lived a young man forged by discipline and strength. He was a former member of the Army Cadet Program, trained in combat, strategy, and leadership. His small silver badge, pinned discreetly on his sweatshirt pocket, carried more weight than anyone around him could guess. To his community, Malik wasn't just a teenager. He was a quiet protector, a mentor who helped kids avoid the dark paths waiting just outside their neighborhoods. He didn't seek attention. He didn't chase glory. He simply did what was right. As Malik sipped his drink, the diner door suddenly creaked open. The warm chatter died instantly. 5 burly men walked in, their heavy boots echoing on the wooden floor like thunder. Their leather jackets covered with flaming skulls and the words "Iron Claws" announced trouble long before their smirks did. They weren't locals. They were predators looking for prey. The leader, a tall, broad man with a scar slicing down his cheek, scanned the room with an icy stare. His name was Travis Cole, and everyone in Georgia's small towns knew who he was. A man with no patience, no conscience, and no respect for anyone who wasn't like him. His gang spread fear wherever they went. And now, they had just found a new playground. The diner fell into a terrified hush. An elderly couple looked down at their plates. A mother pulled her child closer. Even Ruby, the middle-aged waitress who had worked there for 2 decades, froze in place, her cheerful smile replaced by quiet panic. Travis sneered, brushing dust off his jacket. "Well, look at this," he said loudly, his voice dripping with arrogance. "A nice little farmhouse full of scared faces. What do you say, boys? Let's have some fun." His men snickered cruelly. One of them, a tattooed man with a skull inked on his neck, sauntered over to a nearby customer and accidentally knocked over his hot coffee. Crash. "Oops," the man mocked, grinning. "Guess you'll need another cup, huh?" The laughter that followed was sharp and ugly. Ruby tried to hold her composure as she stepped forward, clutching her notepad. "Well, what can I get you fellas today?" she asked softly, her voice trembling. They ignored her. Travis's attention had shifted to a young mother sitting at the back with 2 small children. The little boy's eyes widened as the biker leader approached. He whimpered and buried his face into his mother's arms. Travis leaned in close, smirking. "Oh, what's wrong, little man?" "Don't worry. Mommy's going to protect you, right?" His words dripped with mockery as the gang burst into laughter again. The woman's hands shook. No one dared move except Malik. He had been watching through the reflection in the diner window, his expression unreadable. He placed his glass down, slowly stood up, and turned. "Leave them alone," Malik said, his tone calm, but his voice carried across the room like steel. Every head turned toward him. The laughter died. Even the air seemed to hold its breath. Travis blinked, then barked out a cruel laugh.
"What did you just say, kid?"
He sneered, walking toward Malik's booth.
"You got a death wish or something?"
Malik didn't flinch. "I said, leave them alone," he repeated, eyes steady. "You've already had enough fun." Travis's smile faded. "You must think you're some kind of hero," he growled, taking another step forward. His men circled Malik like wolves, but Malik stood his ground.
"Unmoving, I'm not a hero," Malik replied quietly.
"Just someone who knows you picked the wrong place to act tough." One of the bikers, the man with the skull tattoo, lunged, reaching to grab Malik's arm. Big mistake. In one lightning-fast motion, Malik sidestepped, grabbed the man's wrist, twisted, and flipped him to the floor with a thud that shook the tables. The man gasped in pain, staring up in disbelief. The diner went silent again. Ruby froze mid-step.
A fork dropped somewhere.
Even Travis's grin faltered. Malik turned slightly, his eyes locked on the gang leader. "You still sure you want to do this?" he asked. Travis growled and charged. The fight erupted like a storm. Chairs crashed. Plates shattered. Malik moved with speed and precision, blocking, dodging, and countering every attack. His movements were disciplined, almost graceful, a perfect blend of training and instinct. One man swung a punch. Malik ducked and landed a clean elbow to his ribs. Another tried to grab him from behind. Malik spun, kicked back, and sent him sprawling into a table. Every move was controlled. No wasted effort, no unnecessary violence. By the time Travis caught his breath, 3 of his men were already down, groaning on the floor. Malik stood still, breathing steady. "Walk away," he said coldly. Travis glared, his pride burning hotter than his pain. He clenched his fists, but before he could strike again, a new sound cut through the chaos. Police sirens. They were getting closer. Travis's fury twisted into frustration.
"This ain't over, kid," he roared. "You hear me?"
"We'll be back for you." Malik's lips curled into a small, confident smile. "Only if you're stupid enough to try again." The gang bolted for the door, boots stomping as they vanished into the parking lot just as the sirens grew louder. Inside, the diner erupted, but not in fear, but in applause. People cheered.
Some clapped.
Ruby's eyes welled with tears of relief. Malik, however, simply walked back to his seat, lifted his glass of soda, and took a slow sip, like nothing had happened. Ruby approached him, still trembling, but this time with gratitude. That
was something, kid," she said, placing a fresh slice of pie in front of him. "On the house."
"You saved us all today," Malik smiled faintly. "Just doing what anyone should have done," he replied softly. He ate quietly while the diner slowly returned to normal. But the peace didn't last long. Because outside, someone had recorded everything. The next few days were unlike anything Malik had ever experienced. His name was everywhere. Local news stations, online blogs, and social media platforms across the US were buzzing with the story of the teen who stood up to the bikers. At first, Malik felt overwhelmed. He wasn't used to the attention. Every time he stepped outside, someone recognized him. Some wanted pictures, others thanked him for what he did. But deep inside, Malik knew his mission wasn't about fame, it was about change. Still, not everyone saw it that way. Some people online twisted the story, calling him lucky or saying he staged the whole thing. But Malik ignored the noise. He focused on the community center, helping kids who reminded him of himself. Young, determined, and often underestimated. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the Georgia hills, Malik stayed late at the center. He was cleaning up when the door creaked open. Standing there was someone he never expected to see again. Travis Cole. The same man who had once terrorized a diner now looked like a shadow of his former self. His eyes were tired, his jacket gone, his voice trembling slightly as he spoke. "I'm not here to fight, kid. I came to make things right." Malik stayed silent, studying him. Travis took a deep breath and continued, "I watched that video over and over.
You could have hurt me.
But you didn't. You stood your ground. You made me realize I've been running from myself." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, worn photograph, a boy, maybe 10 years old, smiling brightly. "That's my son, Jake. I don't want him to grow up thinking his father's a monster." Malik's expression softened. For the first time, he saw not the biker, but the man behind the mask. "It's not too late," Malik said quietly. "If you really want to change, I'll help you." That night marked the beginning of something no one could have predicted. Over the next few weeks, Malik and Travis worked side by side at the community center. Travis started small, fixing bikes, repainting walls, helping with food drives. At first, people were skeptical. Some didn't want him there, but Malik stood by him. "Everyone deserves a second chance," Malik told them. Soon, other former gang members began showing up. Curious, hesitant, but willing to try. The same men who once rode through town spreading fear were now helping clean parks and deliver food to struggling families. The transformation was slow, but it was real. The iron claws, once a symbol of intimidation, were now becoming a symbol of redemption. Months passed, and the small Georgia town began to change. The diner, once filled with tension, became a meeting spot for community projects. The streets that used to echo with engines and shouts now rang with children's laughter. Then one afternoon, Ruby, the kind-hearted waitress from the diner, organized a surprise event at the community center. The whole town gathered there. When Malik arrived, he was greeted with applause.
On stage stood Travis, Ruby, and Mr. Henderson. "Malik," said Mr. Henderson, his voice filled with pride, "you've given this town something we lost. Hope.
You turned a fight into a movement, and for that, we honor you." He handed Malik a wooden plaque that read, "Leader of Hope, for courage, compassion, and change." The crowd erupted in cheers, but Malik simply smiled humbly. "This isn't about me," he said. "It's about what happens when people stand together instead of apart." That night, as he walked home, Malik passed the diner where it had all begun. He paused by the window, looking inside, Ruby laughing with customers, the tables full, the world peaceful again. He smiled, because he knew this was just the beginning. The night sky hung over the quiet Georgia town like a velvet curtain sprinkled with silver stars. The streets were calm now, no roaring engines, no shouting, no fear, just peace. Malik walked slowly down the same road where he'd once seen chaos. His hoodie brushed against the cool evening breeze as he glanced at the faint glow of the Route 78 diner in the distance. It was hard to believe that everything, the fight, the fear, the change, had all started there. Inside, Ruby was closing up for the night. She noticed Malik through the window and waved with a warm smile, the kind that said thank you without words. Malik smiled back and kept walking, his footsteps echoing softly on the pavement. He reached the small bridge overlooking the river, the place he often came to think. The water shimmered beneath the moonlight, flowing gently like time itself. As Malik leaned on the railing, his phone buzzed.
"It was a message from Travis. We did it, kid."
"The last of the iron claws are out. We're clean. Thanks for giving me a reason to change." Malik stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back a simple reply. "You gave yourself that reason." He slipped the phone into his pocket and looked at the night sky again. Somewhere deep inside he felt peace. Not the kind that comes from victory, but the kind that comes from knowing you did the right thing. He remembered his days in the Army Cadet program, the lessons about courage, discipline, and empathy. But tonight, he realized something those lessons never taught him. Real strength isn't in how hard you hit, it's in how much you heal. From that day forward, the story of Malik Johnson spread far beyond Georgia. News channels called it the Diner Redemption. Documentaries were made. Schools invited Malik to speak about forgiveness and courage. And every time he stood before a crowd, he didn't talk about the fight. He talked about the change, about how a single act of bravery could echo through an entire community, about how standing up once could lift hundreds. Months later, a small boy walked into the community center holding his father's hand. It was Jake, Travis's son. He ran up to Malik with a grin. "My dad says you're the bravest man he's ever met." Malik knelt down, smiling gently. "Your dad's the brave one, Jake." He chose to change. And in that moment, surrounded by laughter, second chances,
and a community reborn, Malik realized something profound. Sometimes you don't just fight to defend.
you fight to inspire. In a world where hate spreads faster than kindness, sometimes all it takes is one quiet act of courage to change everything. Malik didn't fight for fame, he fought for peace. And peace, once planted, grows in the hearts of those brave enough to believe. In a world divided by hate and fear, one act of courage can spark a lifetime of change. This was Blacktail Stories, where every shadow hides a lesson worth remembering. If this story moved you, don't let it fade away. Subscribe to Blacktail Stories for more powerful life tales and emotional journeys that stay with you long after the screen goes dark. Like, comment, and share. Because every story deserves to be heard, and some deserve to be remembered forever.